Okay. Is everybody in? We're waiting on anybody. James, are you on?
Yeah.
Is everybody in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll kick off. So just as an introduction, everybody, especially to those that have just joined, this is our kind of weekly masterclass schedule as part of the Sales Confidence membership, just for our members. And typically what we do after these sessions, and we discuss them on the weekly members call on the Thursday. This is a particularly exciting session as we think about the importance of sustainable performance and thinking about your mindset and maintaining mental fitness. So Phil has a background in building in sales, building and growing sales teams in the SaaS industry over 10 years. And over the last 5 years, he transitioned into coaching individuals on mindset, performance, as well as kind of mindset, everything to do with the physical aspect. He's also got experience as a personal trainer. Phil's also the first professional coach that we've brought in that you will have, if you haven't had the introduction already, for your first coaching session. So he's already worked with a number of the members. And I think, one thing to say about the essence of like these type of workshops and what we're doing in this kind of select group that you've opted into is that, be very open-minded and be comfortable and willing to share, because that's how we're going to maximize our growth and learning. So Phil, I'll hand over to you.
Good man. Thanks, James. Thank you for the intro. So guys, firstly, welcome. Welcome to the session, and thank you for taking part in today's session. In terms of why we're here to talk about mental fitness. So many of you are probably thinking, what is mental fitness? What is this word that Phil just made up and is about to talk to us for 60 minutes about? So we're gonna cover this as part of the session, but really what I want to do today is introduce you to what mental fitness is, why it's important, how we can cultivate it. But most importantly, what I want to do is give you some tools, some practical tools that you can practice today and you can start integrating into your life immediately off the back of this call. Why am I qualified to talk about this stuff? James gave a little bit of background in terms of where I've come from. I worked 12 years in the SaaS world, and I did jobs just like what you guys are doing today. I was an SDR, I was an AE, I was a sales manager, I managed small teams, I had big budgets, I had my job on the line every quarter, just like many of you guys do. So I know exactly the pressures, the challenges, the desires of people in your roles. And what I wish I had when I was doing a job like yours was some of these tools to help me manage not just my emotional state, but also tools to allow me to kind of manage my intention, for me to be able to kind of act with more intention, for me to be less distracted, to be more focused, to be able to kind of connect to my intuition more, to be able to be more decisive with the calls I make on the deals that I'm working on. And these tools are a way for you to take a little bit of a pause before you make the big decisions, before you jump on the big calls, before you go into those big sales negotiations. These are tools to really help you use your mind more as a tool. When I talk about mental fitness, I talk about, really what I'm talking about is using mindfulness as a tool for performance. And a lot of that really is about slowing down momentarily so that we can speed up. And I'm going to be introducing a few tools that are going to help you to be really intentional with how you operate throughout the day, be focused around what you're doing, but also how to manage the difficult moments. So when you've got challenges, when you've got difficult conversations that you've got to have with clients, or there might even be difficult conversations in your personal life, how do we stay grounded so that we don't react in ways that are not in line with how we want to be, or the results that we want to get? And when we look at, if I look at clients across the board, if I look at why people don't fulfill their potential, it's not because they don't, it's not because they're not trying, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they let their emotions get in the way of the behaviors that they want to do. So they get distracted by difficult thoughts, they get distracted by intense emotions, and they end up, rather than doing the thing that they know they need to do, they procrastinate, or they just don't attend the task with the right intention, because they've got a belief or a thought about what a certain situation means, and that's meant that their mood for the next few hours is down, or their motivation for the next few hours is down. And these are tools that really kind of help you snap out of that, get you back into a mode of high performance. And that's really what I want to talk about today. So I invite you guys to engage in the content, to embrace some of these new techniques, to participate in the session as much as you can. These sessions are interactive. I said to James when we were catching up yesterday, my only concern really about today is trying to get all of this into 60 minutes. So I'm going to try my best to consolidate the core of this information so that you've got stuff that you can take away. But for you to get the most out of this, you need to participate. You need to engage in what I'm talking about. You need to try and understand how what I'm saying relates to your situation, relates to the challenges that you've got going on in your life, relates to the things that you're trying to achieve in your life. And the more you do that, the more you're going to get out of it. If you're open to share, in between each section, I'm going to ask 1 or 2 people to kind of share. It's really helpful for the group when you do that, because once you share, it allows other people to open up and share also. But also what typically happens is when somebody else shares, you actually realize something that you might not have realized about your interpretation of the content as well. So it's really helpful if you share your experience and allow others to learn from what you've experienced throughout the session as well. All right, so we got about 45 minutes. James has told me that I need to finish on time, so we'll try and make sure we do that. We're going to start, guys, with our first exercise. We're going to dive straight in with a tool which I use every single day. The tool is called Clearing the Space, and it's a tool that I use to clear my mind of distractions. It's a tool I use to set intentions for the next activity that I need to do. If I've got a big call, I've got a big session, I've got something important I need to do, I do this in between sessions. It's a bit of a transition meditation. So this is something that is not just something that I've developed. This is something that's used by people in elite sport, top execs in every industry. Some of the smartest people in the world use tools just like this to set themselves up for the most important things that they need to do in their day. So it's going to take about 5 minutes. So what I want everybody to do is find a comfortable position in their chair. See if you can sit upright. Try and get both of your feet on the floor. So try and get the soles of your feet on the floor. Try and sit up tall, so you've got like a flat back. And then I invite you to close down your eyes. And then just drop your shoulders back. And we're just going to start with a few really slow breaths in through the nose. So we're breathing in and out through the nose. On your inhales, I want you to try and get as much air in your lungs as possible. I want you to feel your rib cage expanding, pulling the air into your belly. When you breathe all the way in, slowly out through the nose. Keep the shoulders back and down. Soles of the feet flat on the floor. And breathe slowly in through the nose, out through the nose. I'm going to stay here for a few breaths, just Just let everything calm down. And I just want you to follow the breath as it enters your nose, goes into your chest and down into your belly. And you try and find peace. As things start to calm down, I want you to notice any distracting thoughts, like clouds in a clear sky. So as you breathe in, see if you can imagine any clouds, any thoughts just dispersing in the sky. And the sky become more clear as you get to the top of your in-breath. So as you breathe in, just watch the clouds disperse. And on your out breath, I just want you to say the word release in your mind. If you're not on mute, can you put yourself on mute? Okay. So as your mind starts to quieten, I want you to think about what you want to get out of the next 60 minutes. What would be a good outcome from this session? What do you want to learn? What do you need to do to get the most out of the session? Just really set an intention for the remaining part of this session. How are you going to maximize the value that you get? And you can do this for any meeting you've got, any client call, any internal meeting. It's a few minutes to clear our mind of distraction from our previous activities, and an opportunity to focus on our objective for the next. So just be really clear on what you want to get out of this. Still that in your mind. And ask yourself the question, what do I need to do? How do I need to be to get that outcome? Okay, guys, so I'm going to take 5 more in-breaths in through the nose. On the top of the in-breath, just want you to tap into your body, see how you're feeling in your body. See if you can notice any sensations in the chest, in the belly, the skin. I'm going to take 5 more breaths. At the top of your in-breath, I just want you to put a little smile on your face. Just observe any sensations in your body, see if they change. as you smile at the top of the in-breath. When you've done 5, just open your eyes. We will come back to the room. All right. See, most of you have come out. So guys, that's just a short meditation. I call it transition meditation that you can do in between anything. When I first learned this, I did this 5, 6, 10 times a day in between my most important tasks. And it's a really good opportunity just to reset, clear your mind of any of the chaos that's been happening in your day prior to that moment, and reset for the next action. So I recommend practicing this. The more you practice, the more useful it becomes. It just means that you can act with more intention throughout the day. Does anyone want to share their experience with that before we move on? Does anybody want to share with me what they got from that, if it worked for them, if it didn't?
I think it's quite useful to visualize the dispersing of it when you're breathing out. I think that's quite I've always been someone who kind of suffers from anxiety, and the way I've always thought of it is sitting on a motorway and then a car will go by, and that's like a thought, but if you hold on to that thought, then it almost becomes painful the longer you hold on to it.
For sure.
And so I think it's just good to visualize what that is rather than just saying like let go of it. I think it's like useful to have an object.
And you can play around with that object. That's the beauty of it. It could be anything. You could imagine like a leaf. You could imagine yourself in in an autumn garden, and the thought might be a leaf blowing down a river or something like that. It can be anything. It could be an ice cube melting. It could be whatever you decide it to be. But you're right. It's exactly that. It's visualizing something being there and then disappearing. So you're just essentially visualizing the thought as an object. You're objectifying the thought, which is what it is. You're objectifying it so it doesn't become something that consumes you. But you can play around with that meditation and choose whatever object you want to make it useful to you. All right, good. Thank you for that share. So the next bit is what is mental fitness? So again, I'll take one share from you guys before I go into the content. Does anyone want to have a go at answering that question? What is mental fitness? What does it mean to you? Doesn't need to be, don't worry, it doesn't need to be 100% correct. It's just what does it mean to you?
I think of it as optimal performance of the mind, and allowing you to sustain your pursuit of success by maintaining that optimal mindset.
Very good, James. You've been reading all the books, mate. All right, good. So one more question. Who thinks they've got good, just by show of hands, who thinks they've got good mental fitness? Anybody? Can't see.
I'm sorry, I am late to the call, so apologies, because I had an internal team call, but I missed what you described as mental fitness. If it's determination, I'd like to say that I'm quite determined, but I'll miss the definition. So
the definition,
maybe I'm off the mark, right? So I'm not quite sure.
Definition's coming up, so don't worry, you haven't missed it. It's coming. My question was, who thinks they've got good mental fitness? Any hands? Didn't see any. Okay, cool. All right. So, I mean, mental fitness is on the spectrum, and I think all of us have various levels of mental fitness throughout different periods of our life, even different periods of our day. But let me, if I move on to the next slide, this is my definition of mental fitness, and I've broken it down into 3 areas. I'm just going to give you a moment to read through those. We've got mental strength, we've got mental endurance, and we've got mental flexibility. Mental strength being our ability to focus, to do hard things, to remain calm in the midst of a storm, and to respond skillfully to our emotions. Who thinks they've got good mental strength? Yeah, one. Okay. Mental endurance, the ability to deal with the ups and downs of life, bounce back from difficult emotions, to be resilient, to act consistently in line with our intentions. James, yeah, you're there? A few people. Okay.
I feel like that's something you learn rather than something that you naturally have.
For sure. I think everything's something that we learn, right? Yeah, I don't think they're innate abilities. But for me, the big part of this is to act consistently in line with our intentions. I think that's the big bit, because I think we all have ups and downs, and to be honest, we have to bounce back, right? We can either bounce back or we go into a depression, right? But when we've got good mental endurance, we can kind of navigate those ups and downs, but we can still behave intentionally. We can still be like undistracted by our emotions. If you think about where most of our distractions come from, if we're talking about performance, we're talking about mental fitness in the sphere of performance. Like, distractions come from, if they're external things, they're like people, they're places, they're the next shiny object. But the bulk of our distractions are internal. They're our emotions, they're thoughts, they're things that come up internally, either in our minds or in our bodies, that stop us from making that sales call, or stop us from being more diligent with the proposal we're making, or whatever it might be that you need to do to perform at your best. Quite often it's the internal narrative. It's I can't do that, it's too difficult, or that's it's not going to be appreciated even if I do it. They're not going to buy anyway, or whatever. It's that internal narrative that we have that goes on in our mind that stops us from actually doing the thing that we need to do to get what we need to get what we want to get. Okay, cool. And the last bit is mental flexibility, the ability to seek alternative perspectives, accept that some things are out of our control, to question our thinking and the impact of our mood on our actions, to discern when our internal narrative is accurate and or not serving us. Who thinks they've got good mental flexibility? One or two. For me, this is the toughest one. Does anyone want to give an example? So in fact, let me give an example first before I put this on you guys. So the reason why I think that for me, mental flexibility is the most important, because often the reason why we're struggling with a situation in our life is because of the story we've created around what that situation means. Something's happened, someone said something to us, and we've decided that means they think I'm an idiot, or they don't think I'm good enough, or they think that they can say whatever they want to me. And we create this story. We create this story in our mind about what somebody else's intentions were, and we're making assumptions. Quite often they're not true, and we're essentially suffering because of the story that we've created, because of the narrative of our mind versus the actual event. So our ability to see a different perspective, our ability to see things from another point of view, and understand that quite often our mood or our emotions, that our current emotion is impacting how we've perceived that event. Has anybody got examples of where that's happened for them, where they've kind of reacted in a bad way? They've reacted in a way that they've later regretted, and realized later that their perspective was wrong, or the assumption they made was wrong, and it actually wasn't as bad as they thought it was, but they spent 2 hours worrying that it was the end of the world. Has anybody got any examples of that that's happened to them recently or in their lives?
I sent an invite out for a meeting, and I didn't actually like put his email in it.
Okay.
So it was in my calendar. I've been looking forward to this meeting all week. And obviously he didn't join. I tried to call him and he was basically, I couldn't get hold of him. And I thought I'd absolutely messed it up. It turns out that he was in a board meeting anyway. So regardless of whether I had to put his email in it, he wouldn't have been able to attend, and we had the meeting a week after. But exactly what you said, it was probably longer than 2 hours, to be honest. Probably the rest of the day I spent in a bad mood and then not probably performing to my max purely because of the emotions that I had around that meeting.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I think we all have that. I think this is so common that we kind of create a story that it means. What was your story when he didn't show up to the meeting before you knew he was in a board meeting? What was your story?
I just blame myself, and it wasn't obviously like a thing that I knew that I was going to do all the time. Part of it was almost helpful because I was looking at it as the fact that, right, maybe pay a bit more attention, focus on those things. But obviously it would have been a lead for me, which I would have got commission on. So I basically just thought I'd messed it up, and then was playing on my mind for the rest of the day.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, guys, we're going to move on. So why is cultivating mental fitness important? Benefits of cultivating mental fitness. So I'm going to go straight into the next slide because this explains this really well. When we are operating at a low level of mental fitness, when our mental fitness is low, we are operating at such a small percentage of our potential. When we're limited by our thoughts and we're limited by our beliefs and our inability to navigate our emotions, we're operating at less than 30% of our potential. Which is why I think the first stage is for me, it's about kind of understanding where our thoughts, beliefs, emotions are holding us back. So this is about awareness. This is why a lot of what I teach and what I help clients with is about creating an awareness around where our thoughts and emotions are limiting versus where they're beneficial. And we need to go a little bit inward. We need to have some form of practice where we're tapping into how we're feeling and how our thoughts are impacting us if we want to get rid of the limitations that they're having on our performance. So I'm going to give you some tools to do this. I'm not just going to talk about this. I'm going to give you some tools around how we do this. The next bit is, I think once we get over some of those kind of limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs, difficult or effective management of our emotions, we move into the next bit where we're operating around 60 to 80% of our capacity. And lots of us will find ourselves here or we're dipping in and out of this area. And for me, this is just the beginning. When we really learn to utilize these tools effectively, our potential to perform is limitless. I really believe that when we tap into some of these techniques, we can achieve anything that we want to. And this is why the top 1% of people, the top 5% of people in the world use these tools to achieve greatness. I don't know if many of you guys are into like podcasts or kind of like self-development, listening to kind of like people talk about self-development on podcasts, but there's a guy called Tim Ferriss who he's basically the original podcaster. He was the first podcaster to have a podcast where he'd interview the best people in the world at everything, whether they were an entrepreneur, a business person, musician, athlete, sports star, whatever. He's interviewed all the best people in the world at everything. And when he interviews him, he's written a few books. One of his books is called The Tools of Titans. And if you look at the themes across all of these, pretty much 90%, 95% of these successful people, that they've got a few things in common. They all get up early. They all have some kind of meditation or mindfulness practice, and they all have coaches, mentors, people that they can learn from, people that encourage them to be their best. And I remember reading his book 5 or 6 years ago and thinking there's something in this, and all of the best people in the world are using these tools. So that's why I got into it, and that's why I want to share this stuff with you guys. So, what did I want to say on that? Sorry. So in terms of what I want to say on that, so in terms of, so if I'm going to ask you the question, what do you guys think are the things that stop you from reaching your potential? Anybody want to share any of the things that stop them from reaching their full potential? And we'll cover them off here.
I think discipline can sometimes be, because I find that when I'm in work, I'm like super disciplined, and then outside of work, sometimes not so much, not as consistent in things that I'd want to be, whether it's like gym or whatever else. I always find quite interesting as a contrast, because you'd think if you have like a disciplined mindset, that would sort of exude to all of your life. I find that sometimes like people come to me and they're like, you know, I can't believe you do what you do or whatever, because I'm almost like quite different outside of work than I am in.
Yeah.
You know, if anyone else can like relate.
You're disciplined in, but not out.
Yeah, like within work, I'm like on it. And then maybe it's because I put so much energy into work and there's only so much left outside. I don't know. But like a trend that I've noticed that I'd quite like to fix.
I'd say I'm pretty similar. And particularly when you talk about things like the gym as well, and that you put so much in and then kind of your mental capacity is gone by the time you then start to think about everything that's going on in the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think it's quite common with salespeople. I think it's quite common that salespeople, because you have to be so focused and so disciplined in the day. I think sometimes the appetite to continue with that outside of work can be quite tough. Which is why routines and rituals, the same way you've got routines and rituals in your work life to keep you structured, to keep you focused, it's the same in your personal life. If you want to have a focus on your gym routine or your exercise regime, then it's just about kind of having a bit of structure around that. So I just wanted to pick up on a few things here. So for me, the main reason why people don't reach their potential is their actions, it's behavior. Okay. And if we think about how behavior works, if we look at the neuroscience behind how we behave, 96% of our actions happen in our subconscious. So our brains are clever. Our brains automate anything that we do more than a handful of times. Our brains are very good at going, okay, I've done that before. If this happens, do that. If this happens, do that. And a lot of our behavior patterns are automated. They're happening in our subconscious. So a lot of the thoughts we have, 90% of the same thoughts every day. So we tend to repeat the same thoughts every day. Those thoughts are happening in our subconscious. Those thoughts then create the same emotions. So often we feel the same emotions every day. I'm sure many of you can to relate to this. Like we're often thinking the same things, the same doubts, the same worries, the same things are on our mind most days. And those thoughts turn into emotions, and those emotions turn into behaviors. And the behavior is the thing that affects our results. So the key here, what's important here is trying to understand those patterns, trying to understand what are the subconscious patterns that I repeat daily. Because if we're unaware of them, we don't change. We end up just doing everything on auto. So I encourage you to, part of the reason why I encourage people to have more of a mindfulness practice is so that they can catch those patterns, so they can catch those thoughts. What are the things that I'm always thinking about? Because they're determining how I feel, and how I feel is determining what I do, and what I do is determining what I get. So it all kind of comes back to just kind of trying to understand those patterns. What are the patterns that serve us? What are the patterns that don't? Any questions on that? Does everybody understand that as a concept, first of all? Yeah. The other things I would say in terms of things that distract us, and this is why this is relevant, is so distraction. And so distraction is typically thoughts. The other things that kind of stop us from reaching our potential is fear. Often fear is fear of rejection, fear of not succeeding, fear of not being enough. emotions. Okay, so it's the same things. We need to address them. Doubt. What's doubt? Doubt is a thought that leads to an emotion. Mood. It's the same idea. It's the mood is just like it's just an emotion that means that we don't do the thing that we're supposed to do. We're in a bad mood, or we're in a lazy mood, or in a mood that is not effective for us to do what we need to do. Again, these are the things that kind of like that hold us back. The other bits for me are lack of clarity, lack of motivation, and procrastination. And I think these are quite interlinked. I think hands up here who procrastinates. Anybody? All right, I thought that would be the case. Why does procrastination happen? It happens because we're not clear. We don't know what we want. We're not clear on what the next activity is. It happens because we're not connected to our why, to our purpose of why we're doing it. So we're not motivated because it's just an item on our list. We need to, again, it's about using these tools to understand what we want, what we need, what we want, why we want it. And also I think procrastination can come from lack of confidence as well. So I think when we're confident that we know what we want, we know why we want it, and we're confident we can get it, I think we're in a much better position from there to actually execute on our actions. All right, good. Any questions on that, guys? I'm moving through this relatively quickly just because I'm just very conscious of time. Is there any questions on what I've spoken about so far? Is everybody following?
I have a question, just something I struggle with is, you know, I really like the start, like that meditation, because I find when you're in sales, it's a lot of talking, a lot of doing and thinking. Just to sit still is like to notice those thoughts or whatever they are. How do you know, like, when these thoughts come up or these emotions or whatever, like what to pay attention to? Because sometimes you should pay attention to that, or like you should sit with it for a bit, or you should listen to those messages, I suppose, or what you should think, no, that's a limiting thought, that's not serving me, like I shouldn't listen to that. Like, does that make sense in terms of what you should pay attention to in your brain?
Yeah, it does. So my view would be you should listen to the messages of your body. So when you're in a meditation, so if you think, when I say to you, kind of tap into how you're feeling, tap into the sensations of your body, i.e. what's happening in your chest, what's happening in your belly, what sensations you feel on your skin, on your neck, on your shoulders. That's about kind of tapping into the messages of your body. What is your body trying to tell you? That's really important. I mean, that's a superpower when we can actually close our eyes and figure out what our body's trying to tell us. Is this what I want? Is this dangerous? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this the right course of action? What do I actually want? How do I want to be in the next 60 minutes? You know, those things, that's really useful. Our thoughts are it's an interesting one because we can't control thoughts. Thoughts are, it's really difficult to explain this without going too esoteric, but thoughts are always going to come and go, and we can't control what thoughts that we think about, but we can control which ones we focus on. And in the next exercise, in the next practical exercise we do, I'm going to show you how you can use thought, or the power of attention, to redirect how your body's feeling. So I'm going to show you a technique to do that. So hopefully that answers your question somewhat, but I'd say it's more important to listen to the messages of your body than your thoughts, because your thoughts are not really real. You know, they're just objects. They're not really anything. And an analogy that I came across recently, which I thought was quite interesting, is like when you've got a thought that's bothering you, like typically that thought, that the thing that's bothering you is just a thought in the present about the future or the past. So it doesn't, I mean, particularly if it's in the future, it doesn't even exist. It's just a thought that you're having now in the present about something that's not happened yet. So it's not even real. And I think like when you can kind of make that distinction, And I'm going to show you in this visualization how powerful thoughts are, how our thoughts can change the emotions that we feel across in our body. It kind of makes sense to let go of thoughts that don't serve you and focus on the ones that do. And I think there's a little bit in between there in terms of questioning whether they're true or not as well. But I think the primary question is, does this serve me? Yes or no? If no, let it go. That would be my thoughts.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, thank you.
So what is an emotion? I'm just going to answer this rather than just take one from the group just because of time. So emotions are essentially physiology. So and when we feel an emotion is essentially our body's response to our external environment. Okay, so something happens. It's the change in physiology in our body that we feel as an emotion. So for example, it is churning stomach, it is faster heart rate, it is tight chest, it is hot skin. They are just the nuances of our different emotions. It's our physiology changing. That's what we're talking about when we say, oh, I feel sad, or I feel angry, or I feel whatever. It's just our physiology changing, and that's what we're noticing. What's interesting, I think, is our body wants to return to homeostasis, so back to normal, in 90 seconds. Our body doesn't want to stay in those extreme states for more than 90 seconds. So the only reason why it stays in those states of stress for longer than 90 seconds is because we attach a thought to what those emotions mean. We say, churning stomach, tight chest, that means anxiety. It will probably mean that means he doesn't like me, or that means she's scary, or that means whatever. Then anxiety kicks in. Okay. But what's interesting is some of the same physiology that we feel in our bodies when we're anxious, the physiological adaptations are exactly the same as when we're excited. It's the same feelings. We get that churning in our stomach, we get that tightness in our chest. It's the same feelings. We've just attached a different meaning to that same physiology. So this time we're saying, oh, no, I'm excited to go on this date, I'm excited to speak at this event. And it's and what's the label, how we label those changes in physiology determines what they mean to us. And it's quite often the story that we create around the change in physiology that determines how we feel. Does that make sense, first of all, before I move on? Yeah?
You kind of saying you can control your emotions dependent on your perspective on how you feel, if that makes sense.
I'm saying that the emotions, if we can get used to labeling changes of state as, if we can get used to when we feel the intensity of an emotion, if we can get used to just closing down our eyes and trying to understand what is happening in our body, what is the physiology of my body right now? What am I feeling in my chest? What am I feeling in my stomach? What am I feeling in my face? What do I feel on my skin? And understand the nuance of each emotion. When we are able to just label it as a change in physiology, I'm saying that the intensity of the emotion is going to really subside really, really quickly. And that's physiological. And then we've got an opportunity to then investigate the story that is fueling that. Once we've labeled the nuances of the physiology, we can then investigate the story that we've created that is fueling that emotion. Make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. The other interesting bit that I'll say here is, like, so emotions are, like, some of our emotions are kind of like evolutionary as well. So our emotions are either evolutionary or learnt. Okay, so there's certain emotions, like certain emotions that we've kind of over the time that we've been evolving as humans, we've learned to, I don't know, for example, what's a good example? Like when there's certain things where we're be more fearful. So we're I guess our emotions are there to kind of protect us from danger and move us towards love and connection. They're the kind of the primary functions of our evolutionary emotions. In today's world, they're much more nuanced. Most of the things that we're fearful of are not physical anymore. We're not running away from saber-toothed tigers anymore. Most of the things that we're fearful of are our emotions, is our psychological state. So we're running away from difficult psychological states and we're moving towards more pleasant ones. So the nuances of it have changed, but their operation is the same. They're trying to protect us from things that are difficult, things that we should be scared of, and they're trying to move us towards love and connection. Any questions on that before I move on? No? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna take you through an exercise to help you understand this in a little bit more detail. Then we're gonna do like a short reflection. I'm gonna give you one more. In fact, I might have to skip a bit, then we're just gonna review some tools at the end. So we're gonna do this visualize body scan and visualization, quick reflection, and then we'll just do an overview of some of the tools that you can use to help manage your states a bit more effectively. So again, I'm going to encourage you to find a similar comfortable position in your chair. Try and get both feet on the floor if you can, soles of the feet on the floor, sit upright, and then we're just going to close the eyes down. Again, we're just going to continue with that nasal breathing. So in through the nose, out through the nose. Make the breaths deep and long. Again, see if you can follow the breath from the beginning of the inhale down the throat, opening up of the chest and the rib cage, and deep into the belly. And we'll let it out through the nose. The more conscious, the more slow, and the more deep you can make these breaths, better. The conscious, slow, and deep. And just try and notice any sensations in the body. See if you can notice where the air goes as you breathe it in through the nose. See if you can filter. See if you can feel the air filter through your skin, through the cells of your body. I just want you to start a half body scan. So what I mean by that, I want you to keep the breath as it is. So continue with the slow inhales through the nose, exhales through the nose. Keep that as slow as possible. I now want you to add a body scan. So we're just scanning from our head, noticing any sensations in our face, in our neck, in our shoulders, in our chest, in our back, in our belly. I just want you to scan up and down. Face, neck, shoulders, chest, back, belly. And we're just going up and down, keeping the breath slow. And I really want you to be really observant. Any sensation you feel on the skin, internally in the body, in the organs. What can you feel? Listen to the messages of your body. So we're going to remain, those two things are constant. Slow breathing in through the nose, the body scan, waist to head, head to waist. Okay, so now I'm gonna add a few bits, okay? So I'm going to walk you through a couple of scenarios, but I want you to maintain the slow breathing and the body scan as I walk you through these scenarios, and just observe the changes in your body. So the first one, I want you to think of a situation, an event that's triggered you recently, something that's annoyed you, made you feel anxious, frustrated. I want you to picture that event in your mind. I want you to continue with the slow breathing, and I want you to scan your body for sensation. What is changing? What changes in your body do you feel when you picture that event, when you visualize that frustrating moment, that frustrating circumstance? What can you see? What can you feel? And I want you to ask yourself the question internally, how did I react in that situation? Was I happy with how I reacted? How did I deal with that difficult situation? And just make note of that. Okay, next bit, guys, I want you to visualize somebody that you have, that you love unconditionally. So it's quite useful to use like a child if you have children, or a niece or nephew, someone where your relationship is uncomplicated. And I want you to picture them. I want you to picture them smiling, laughing. I want you to picture them really happy. They're smiling at you, they're jumping on you. And again, I want you to observe the sensations in your body, what's happening as you visualize that person. How does your physiology change? What's happening? Do the body scan, face, neck, shoulders, chest, belly. What changes can you observe in your physiology? They're smiling at you. They're full of joy. They're full of playfulness. Observe your physiology now. And again, take note of that. How does it feel? Try and tap into the detail, the nuances of that feeling. I'm going to give you one more. So I want you to visualize somebody that you respect, somebody that you admire greatly, somebody that you're grateful for, somebody that you've got so much gratitude for, so thankful that they're in your life. Same idea. I want you to think of them really happy, living well, doing well. Again, observe the sensations in your body. What can you feel on your skin? What can you feel in your chest and your belly, in your neck and your shoulders? Try and hang on to this feeling. Try and understand the detail, the nuances. And the next bit is a tough bit. So I want you to try and hang on to that feeling. Hang on to the feeling of gratitude, of the love that you had for the child. And from this place, I want you to ask yourself the question, if scenario 1 happened again, how would you react? What options would you have if you were coming from this place? If you're feeling the way you feel now, what are the options available to you? What are the alternative ways to respond? What are the different ways we could look at that situation from scenario 1? If you knew that whatever happened in that situation wasn't a reflection of you, but it was just somebody else dealing with their own stuff, if you could offer compassion and kindness to whatever it is that they're going through and not think it's about you, how would you respond from there? Make sure you're sitting up tall, guys, straight back, flat back. I want you to take 10 breaths, really deep inhales. And I want you to pause at the top of the breath, top of the inhale. Pause. And release. And play around with the length of that pause at the top of the inhale. And that inhale, that pause at the top of the inhale, that's your window. That is your opportunity to change your response, to not react the way you've always reacted, to not react by default, to not react by those subconscious patterns that 96% of our behaviors come from. That pause is our opportunity to change the response, to act more intentionally, to act with clarity, decisiveness, not react full of emotion. Just practice that at the top of the breath, that pause. And when you've done circa 10, we're going to finish the meditation by just taking another 5 breaths. And again, I want you to put a smile on your face at the top of the in-breath. And again, watch and observe the sensations of the body as you smile. What changes, what happens? What can you notice as you smile? What impact does that have on your body? Again, when you've done 5, just come out and open your eyes. You need to just shake your neck off, have a bit of a stretch if it's useful. All right. Okay. Anybody want to share their experience? I'll take 1 or 2 shares.
To be honest, I struggled, if I'm being completely honest, to maintain the feeling. The difference is one happy, one when you respect someone, and I felt like heaviness at the top of my eyes. And then secondly, when we're doing the pause, do we use that pause to kind of just disrupt the thought pattern, or do we use that pause to think about how we're going to respond differently? That's what I was trying to work out.
I think both. I think initially to disrupt the pattern, But then the second stage of that is to think about a more a response that's more in line with how you would want to respond, rather than just the conditioned response through the conditioned emotion.
Cool.
Thanks for your share. So you couldn't get into the visualization. You couldn't visualize.
I could visualize it, yeah, and then
you couldn't feel the feelings.
Trying to bring that feeling back. All right,
Yeah.
It's the first time I've done it, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Could you feel the changes in physiology or not?
I think maybe that's what I was struggling to identify.
Yeah. Okay.
Guys, I'm in a hot little call booth, so I'm just hot regardless of.
Yeah. Fair play.
But yeah, I mean, what really struck a chord with me earlier on in this conversation when you said we've got the same thought patterns over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was going to be, until we did this, was, well, how do we disrupt those patterns, right?
Mm.
So if this is a technique that you recommended, I'm definitely going to try it.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to just dive into things, right?
For sure. Yeah, you need to. I think it's practice. These things, like, it's not a case of just doing it once and then magic. Everything's better. But what I found, I can give my experience, is the more regularly I tap into this type of exercise, and the more I understand the nuances of my emotions. So, for example, where it's worked the best for me is when my emotions are really intense. So when I'm really annoyed or really frustrated or really angry, literally sit down, close my eyes, and figure out what are the nuances of anger or frustration. What is the actual physiology of those emotions? Because if I can understand them in their most intense form, then when they're not intense, when it's just like a smaller situation, I can be like, okay, that's anger. I get it. I can feel it happening before it's too intense. Does that make sense? And so the more you practice it, the more familiar you'll get with what anger feels like, what frustration feels like, what disappointment feels like. And that's really useful, because normally what we do is we don't feel it until it's so intense that we blow. But if we can get used to feeling it in a controlled way, like through a meditation in its intense form, then when it's in its less intense form, we can just catch it really early before we blow. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Does anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I found that really beneficial. Like it's not my first sort of meditation. So I think when you're first doing it, it's really hard to just sit there and sort of focus and breathe. But the more you do it, yeah, you feel those benefits. And thinking about like an event or something that caused me frustration and upset, my reaction, I thought it was actually okay. And then I thought about people I loved and felt, that really nice warm feeling inside, like my heart just went really warm. Then thinking back to that event, I would have reacted differently. I would have reacted a lot more open, a lot more curious. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. So the reason I use that is I want to show people that how we're feeling determines how we perceive an event, and determines how we respond. So if we can create states of gratitude, of compassion, of love, we are much more likely to operate or act in ways that are aligned to us. But if we're unaware of how our current mood or emotion is affecting our perceptions, then we're just blinded. We're just blinded by our own mood. Good. So I'm glad you found that useful. Guys, I know we've run way over. I'm just going to leave with one thing. And this is this, and I'll send this slide deck to James so you guys can have it. But these are the tools, okay? And we've touched on many of them today: the breath, the thoughts, what we focus on, awareness. This is what's happening in our bodies, the story. We haven't spoke about assumptions today, but I wanted to. But again, so for the guys of you that are doing coaching, these are the sorts of things that we'll talk about. Exploring alternative perspectives. We spoke about recognizing patterns, interrupting patterns, reframing experiences, And then good questions, I think, is the final piece. Is asking myself the right question. If I knew X, if I knew it wasn't about me, what would I do? If I knew that I was good enough to do this, what would I do? If I didn't care about rejection, what would I do? You know, it's these questions that we can ask ourselves to create the actions that we want. All right, guys, I know I've gone way over, so I apologize. Thank you for hanging on, for those of you that have. Has anybody got any questions? I'm happy to kind of like, I can stay for as long as you guys want me to, but has anybody got any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, I was going to see if you had an extra 5 minutes anyway. Basically, it's quite odd. Everything you've covered from the beginning of the session, I've either been aware of or practiced at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You might have worked with people that have this, but I'm going through the process of being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
So my biggest point is, where I've either practiced it or been aware of it, is I struggle with consistency and distractions. One of the key things you mentioned was routine as well.
Yeah.
And I love creating morning routines, doing them for like 4 or 5 weeks, waking up at 5 a.m. every day, going to the gym, meditating, journaling. But then after 4 or 5 weeks, I like to freestyle things again. And it's more, have you got like any tips in particular on dealing with distractions and sort of improving consistency?
Dealing with distractions for me is about why, is about the reason why you're doing something. So I think if you're getting distracted, the reason why people get distracted is because the thing that they want to do is not important enough. That's why they get distracted. So for me, it's about building a case for it. So if this is something you want to do, so for example, when I started to build my mindfulness practice, the first stage for me was routine. So the first stage was I just committed to doing 1 minute a day. So every day I would do 1 minute, regardless of how busy I was. I would just do 1 minute. And obviously most days I would do more than one, but I wouldn't leave the house until I've done 1 minute. So that kind of built the ritual, the ritual around it. But then what I noticed, particularly when I started doing the transition meditations, when I was doing them in between sessions, when I was doing them in between important meetings, important calls, important activities, was I got so much more out of each call, out of each meeting, out of each session. I was like, I was performing better because I was more intentional around how I showed up to that meeting. So it then became something that created its own business case, because I was like, I will not do a session now without taking 5 minutes before to connect to what my body's feeling, to just clear my mind of distractions, to set an intention around what I need and want to do. Because I've built the case for it, I know that I am going to perform better in every interaction if I take 5 minutes before to prepare. So I think it's about knowing why you're doing it. If you're just doing it to tick it off a list of something you've done, that's only ever going to be, you're only ever going to be working off willpower. But if you can find the reason why, if you're like, okay, well, I know that my sales calls are better if I do this, or I know that my gym session is better, or my conversations with my girlfriend or my boyfriend or whatever are better because I do this, that will be when it changes, because you'll have a reason to do it rather than just because it's on your list of things you said you would do. That'd be my advice, mate.
Cheers.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody else got anything? I'm happy to hang around, so feel free if you want to ask me anything. No? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming along and joining the session. I'm sure I'll see some of you on the coaching sessions. I think there's a few new people here who've signed up for those, so I'll see you in the one-on-ones. But yeah, I think I'll probably do another one of these in about 6 months' time. So I'll introduce you to some of the additional tools, and I'll send this round to James for you.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you. That was really, really good. Got a lot out of that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
No worries, guys. Speak soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I need to go over. All right, cool.